One of the questions presented to me by my agnostic, atheist, anti-Cirque friends is, how can I promote the Torah that supports child killing? So I responded to him, it is absolutely forbidden to injure a child, and of course they bring in the circumcision, which I can tell you is absolutely beneficial to the child, but we'll focus on child sacrifice. Child sacrifice was a reality of the ancient world. It was the people of Israel who championed the cause of the sanctity of life and that no human being should be sacrificed. The fact that you have the case of the Akedah, where God asks Abraham to bind Isaac upon the altar, was a test for Abraham to see his devotion to the Creator. Now remember, for you atheists out there, or really you're agnostic, you're not really atheist because you don't know what's out there. And you say, well, I don't know either. I know more than you. But let's talk about it for a second. If you know that there's a Creator, and the Creator has communicated with you, then you have to follow what the Creator says, because the Creator created everything, including yourself. So you are at the disposal of the Creator, as is everything else. And if the Creator asks you to do something, you're obligated to listen. Now, Abraham, Avraham, was not just an ordinary person. He was a prophet. Now let me describe to you what exactly is a prophet. So I will use the classical definition of Maimonides, who some of you anti-Cirques keep quoting. He is the giant of giants, but he's not the only opinion. But in this, which I will quote for you, he is the only opinion. Maimonides says as follows: in order to be a proper Jew, one must do the commandments. Why? Because the commandments teach you how to be balanced emotionally, how to be able to control the extremes of the emotion, and that by performing all the commandments, you learn how to be careful, how to be loving, how to be considerate, how to be charitable, how to be brave, how to be strong, and how to be compassionate without going overboard, because all of these emotions, if you go overboard, they become destructive, either to you or to the world. Even compassion that's excessive is destructive. When you have compassionate people wanting to take everybody else's money and giving it away, you wind up with a society of paupers who cannot create anything for themselves. Wealth is a blessing that allows for the accumulation of other wealth and allows for people to create endeavors and to create businesses and to be employed and to be able to live. But when you take away the wealth of people completely and impoverish make everybody equal, then nobody does anything. Nobody can do anything. People are paralyzed. Economies grind to a halt, which is exactly what's happening today's day and age, but that's a different story. So when you have compassion, compassion must be tempered by making sure that it's appropriate compassion. And the same thing is true with bravery. Bravery is great, but you can't be stupid. Kindness is good, but you can't be kind to a killer and give him a gun or give him the means to destroy someone. Every trait that a human being has to be balanced, and most of us don't know how to balance ourselves. And the Torah, by giving us the 613 commandments, teaches us to be in command of our emotions and to create an emotionally balanced person. What's the purpose of all of that? Maimonides states is to become wise, to become a philosopher, to understand the great truths of the world. You cannot understand the great abstract truths of the world, says Maimonides, if you're an emotional cripple. If you have an imbalance, you're too compassionate, you're too tough, you're not kind enough, you're overly kind, you're lazy, you're too busy, you can never understand the truth. Truth can only be to someone who's in command of the emotions, and that's through the commandments. But then you must become a philosopher, a wise person. And you must understand universal truths. And only after you understand the universal truths and meditate upon them and see how they evolve and come from the Creator, only then can you be a vessel for prophecy. Because prophecy is divine intellect, the wisdom of godliness, understanding God and godliness, understanding the wisdom of the angels, knowing the spheriotic system that exists beyond our world, understanding the concepts of Ein Sof and the light of Keter and Arich and Atik and all those wondrous things that the Kabbalah mentions. Prophecy requires philosophy, but only after you become wise, only then can you become a prophet. So who was Abraham? Abraham was a man of extreme kindness and extreme courage. He was a man who could temper his kindness and be able to overcome his kindness, his natural kindness, and do what God wanted, including the sacrifice of his son, if it was necessary. And that was his test, to go against his nature. But God's intent was not human sacrifice. The intent was to see whether Abraham was a balanced human being or whether he only did things naturally. A person does things naturally cannot go against his nature. A person who's compassionate out of nature is not a strong and brave person most of the time. A person whose heart bleeds is not a person who's got courage and is able to lead. But a person who has courage sometimes overlooks the needs of the individual. And you can't have that in a leader. Abraham was a leader. He was a warrior. He was compassionate. He had everything, and it was imbalanced. And Abraham was a philosopher. He taught astronomy to the ancient Egyptians. He taught the wisdom of God to the nations of the world. And in fact, the Indians have a sect called the Brahmins, who believe that they are from Abraham. Brahmin and Abraham have the same basic letters. So Abraham's influence upon the nations of the world was very great. So he was a man of great personal character, in control of his heart and his emotion. He was a great scholar. He was a great philosopher and scientist. And above all, he then merited to hear God and to understand God, and God communicated to Abraham. And only after Abraham communicated with God, after he was a man of compassion, a man of truth, a man of letters, a philosopher, only after that did he become a prophet. He was not a wide-eyed, deranged crazy. He was the most serious thinker of his time, who knew God, and God spoke to him. And only then could Abraham have the test which he passed. But the test was not intended for human sacrifice. The test was to see the character of Abraham, if he was only working by his nature, by his natural impulses, or whether he truly was a master of self and could change his natural inclinations. And only then did he merit the blessings of transmitting his knowledge and his spirituality to his children and children's children. In the merit of Abraham's binding of Isaac, we, the people of Israel, the Jewish people, are still around, and we share that knowledge of God that Abraham had starting out so many years ago. Good Shabbos, my friends.